Elite Facts presents
8 kids raised by wild animals. 8. Raised by monkeys. At the young age of only 5 years old, Marina Chapman says that she was kidnapped. She didn't know for sure why she was kidnapped, but she believes the most likely reason was for ransom. After being kidnapped, she was abandoned in the Colombian jungle, and after being taken in by a group of capuchin monkeys, she lived in the wild for some 5 years. As unbelievable as that sounds, experts say that capuchin monkeys have been known to accept young children into their fold. The animals taught young Marina how to catch birds and rabbits with her bare hands, so she was able to survive. She rejoined the human world when she was taken by hunters and sold to a brothel, from which she eventually escaped.
7.
Raised by goats. We'll be honest, we didn't think goats would be capable of taking a human into their family, but apparently they're known to do this. Take this story, for example. Back in June of 2012, social workers in Russia discovered a toddler who had been locked in a room with goats by his mother. Reportedly, this young boy played and slept with the goats, but apparently nourishment was hard to come by as he weighed a third less than a typical child his age. When the child was rescued, his mother had disappeared. Doctors have since tried to acclimate the toddler to human life with some difficulty. According to one of the doctors who looked after the young boy, quote, "He refused to sleep in the cot. He tried to get underneath and sleep there. He was very scared of adults. Sounds like he was a bad boy."
6.
Raised by feral cats and dogs. Considering some of the stories you hear when it comes to feral dogs and cats, you'd think a child wouldn't be able to survive among them. Well, back in 2009, welfare workers were led to an unheated flat in a Siberian town where they found a 5-year-old girl they called Natasha. Now, technically, she was living with her father and other relatives, but Natasha was treated like one of the many dogs and feral cats that shared the space. Much like her feral companions, Natasha fed on food from bowls left on the floor. She didn't know any human words and only communicated with hisses and barks. The father was nowhere to be found when authorities rescued the girl, and Natasha has since been placed in an orphanage.
5.
Raised by wild cats. Here we have another story of a child being raised by feral cats. Back in 2008, Argentinian police discovered an abandoned 1-year-old boy surrounded by 8 wild cats. According to the police reports, these cats acted as guardians, keeping the boy alive during the freezing winter nights by laying on top of him, and even trying to lick the crusted mud from his skin. The boy was also seen eating scraps of food, likely foraged by his protective brood.
4.
Raised by wild dogs. And here's another story of a child being raised by a pack of wild dogs. Back in 2001, a 10-year-old Chilean boy was found living in a cave with a pack of wild dogs. Apparently, this boy had been living with these dogs for at least 2 years. The boy had already survived a rough and unstable childhood, having been abandoned by his parents and then fleeing alternative and unorthodox care. Alone, the child sought refuge with a pack of dogs who helped him scavenge for food and even protected him from anything they deemed as a threat to the boy's life. Officials said the boy might have even drunk milk from one of the female dogs, and that these dogs were, quote, like his family.
3.
Raised by wolves. Okay, let's take being raised by feral dogs one step further. Wolves. This is one of the more well-known stories when it comes to a child being raised by wild animals. The story features 2 children by the names of Kamala and Amala, otherwise known as the Wolf Children. Discovered in 1920 in the jungles of India, the girls aged 3 and 8 had been living with a she-wolf and her pack. It's not known if the girls were from the same family, but the man who found the girls, Reverend J.A.L. Singh, took them back to his orphanage, where he tried to get them acclimated to their human surroundings. Now, even though both of these girls made progress when adapting to regular human life, both eventually came down with fatal illnesses, leaving the Reverend to wonder if, quote, the right thing to do would have been to leave these children in the wild where I found them.
2.
The Syrian Gazelle Boy. Next up, we have a strange story that dates back to 1946, when Life magazine published an article about a 10-year-old boy who was discovered by a group of hunters running wild among a herd of gazelle in the Syrian desert, and was only caught with the help of a military jeep. Now you're probably wondering, why did they need a jeep to capture a 10-year-old? Well, because he was pretty much the Flash. Apparently, this boy could run at speeds of up to 50 kilometers per hour. He was believed to have been abandoned as a baby, and although terribly thin, he was said to have been extremely fit and strong, with muscles of steel. The Syrian Gazelle Boy was taken to an asylum for the insane and was still alive in 1955 when he attempted to escape from whichever unpleasant state institution he had been incarcerated in.
1.
The Russian Bird Boy. So far, we've had wild cats, wild dogs, wolves, goats, monkeys, and gazelles. How do we top that? Well, how about this story of a Russian boy who was raised by birds? Back in 2008, Russian care workers rescued a 7-year-old boy who, after being raised by his mother in a virtual aviary, was only capable of communicating through chirping. According to the authorities, the neglected child was found living in a tiny 2-room apartment surrounded by cages containing dozens of birds, bird feed, and droppings. The Russian newspaper Pravda reported that the so-called bird boy did not understand any human language and could only communicate by chirping and flapping his arms. A local social worker by the name of Galina Volskaya, who was involved in rescuing the child from his home in Kirovsky, Volgograd, said that he was treated like just another pet by his 31-year-old mother, who apparently never spoke to him at all. Miss Volskaya said, quote, "When you start talking to him, he chirps." Russian authorities say the child was not physically harmed but suffered from Mowgli syndrome, named after the Jungle Book character raised by wild animals, and cannot engage in any normal human communication. According to Pravda, quote, "His mother had her own domestic birds and fed wild ones. She didn't beat him or starve him, she just never talked to him. Only the birds communicated with the boy and they taught him their language. The boy's mother signed an abdication form to release the child into care after he was discovered. He was temporarily transferred to an asylum, but according to reports, he was later sent to the Center for Psychological Care." And that's our list. Did we leave any stories out that you know about? Let us know in the comments below. Please remember to subscribe and tap the bell button to be notified when new videos are uploaded. Thanks for watching.
Don't forget to like us and subscribe for more Elite Facts.